Pittsburgh's playoff hopes might now hinge on something that happened off the field. Specifically, in the stands at Ford Field, DK Metcalf, their star receiver, was caught on camera punching a fan during an emotionally fraught exchange, one reportedly laced with racial slurs and personal attacks. The viral clip ignited a national debate, but in Pittsburgh, it's also set off alarms about team stability. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. With just weeks left in the regular season, losing Metcalf even temporarily could tip the balance in a tightly contested AFC race. That's because Metcalf isn't just another receiver. He's a cornerstone of the Steelers' offense and one of Aaron Rodgers' most trusted targets in critical drives. A suspension, even for a single game, could alter the team's postseason trajectory. As league officials deliberate consequences, Pittsburgh fans and coaches are left hoping that any punishment doesn't cost them more than just a player. It could mean a season. The fallout from this single moment now has implications far bigger than just disciplinary. It was Week 16, and tensions were already sky high. The Steelers were fighting for playoff positioning. The Lions were trying to prove they weren't a fluke, and Ford Field was packed with loud, emotionally charged fans. Then, in the middle of all that chaos, a moment happened that immediately exploded across social media. DK Metcalf, standing near the sidelines, turned toward the stands and straight up punched a fan. Caught on camera, there was no ambiguity, no fuzzy angles. No, maybe it was just a shove. The video clearly shows Metcalf walking toward the railing, exchanging heated words with someone in the stands, and throwing a punch. Phones were already rolling. The clip hit the internet before the next play was even run. And just like that, the game was no longer the main. The punch lit up social media timelines, sports group chats, and studio panels almost instantly. DK Metcalf, one of the most recognizable wide receivers in the league, had just physically retaliated against a fan, in uniform, during a live game with millions watching. What made it even more shocking was that there was no flag, no ejection, no on-field reaction from the refs at all. People couldn't believe it. How did a punch to a fan during an NFL game not result in any immediate consequences? Was this a glitch in the system? A blind spot in the rulebook? Or something worse? Was the league choosing to turn a blind eye in real time? It turns out this wasn't just about what Metcalf did. It was about why he did it. Reports began circulating almost immediately that the fan who was punched had been relentlessly heckling him, not just casual trash talk. Witnesses claimed the fan hurled personal insults, called Metcalf by his full legal name, and even brought his mother into it, and not in a playful, yo mama kind of way. Even worse, there were allegations that racial slurs were involved. That shifted the conversation fast. Suddenly, it wasn't just about violence. It was about provocation, boundaries, and the unbearable weight of composure expected from athletes in the face of outright abuse. And still, no flag, no ejection, just an escalating situation left to play out on Twitter, sports talk shows, and eventually in league disciplinary meetings. The NFL confirmed it would review the incident post-game, as it wasn't something referees were able to assess during play, which, to be fair, is true. NFL refs are trained to watch the field, the ball, the clock, and the players, not the fans. But it didn't sit right with a lot of people, because if a punch thrown by a player at a fan can't be flagged in real time, what else is slipping through the Steelers' playoff hopes were already hanging by a thread. DK Metcalf is more than just a star. He's their offensive anchor, their physical mismatch, their red zone weapon. Losing him, even for one game, could be the difference between making the playoffs and watching from home. The fact that he wasn't ejected might have spared them in the moment, but the looming suspension could still cost them dearly. Now, Pittsburgh fans were nervously refreshing news feeds, waiting to see if the league would bring the hammer down. One punch, in the heat of the moment, and now the entire postseason outlook could change. The debate got loud and messy. Was Metcalf justified? Was this self-defense? Was he supposed to just stand there while a fan hurled abuse at him? Or does being a professional mean walking away? No matter what gets said, some fans were firmly in his corner. He's human, they said. You can't just expect him to take that level of disrespect and do nothing. Others weren't so sympathetic. It's the NFL. You don't throw hands at a paying fan, even if they're being disgusting. It all came down to one messy question. Where's the line? The NFL has long struggled with this. Fan behavior has gotten worse in recent years. More aggressive, more personal, more entitled. And stadiums are loud, unpredictable places where things can escalate fast. But so far, most of the league's policies have focused on player conduct, not fan misconduct. This moment forced that conversation into the spotlight, because if a fan can say anything with no consequences, and the only rule is players can't respond, that feels like a setup for disaster. The NFL promised to investigate. That means looking at all the footage, official camera angles, stadium security videos, fan shot clips, and audio if they can get it. They'll look at whether the fan crossed the line into hate speech. They'll assess whether Metcalf had a clear opportunity to disengage, and then they'll make a call. Fine, suspension, warning, or some combination. If the league confirms physical contact, a suspension is almost inevitable. And with the playoffs on the line, that's a nightmare scenario for Pittsburgh. But it's not just about this one game, or this one player. It's about what kind of precedent the NFL wants to set. Do they want to say players must rise above provocation, even when it's vile and personal? Or are they ready to say fans don't get a free pass to be monsters? Whatever they decide will send a message. And every player in the league is watching. And while the fan hasn't been publicly identified, that might not last long. If the NFL rules that the fan use hate speech, there could be bans, lawsuits, even criminal complaints. Some teams have started taking fan behavior way more seriously, especially in light of viral incidents like this. Stadium bans aren't new, but they may become a norm after situations like this. In the meantime, the conversation continues. Should the NFL provide players with more protection from fans? Should teams station security near benches? Should fans sign stricter codes of conduct with real penalties? Because this clearly isn't just a one-off. It's a warning. The visual of Metcalf throwing that punch isn't going away anytime soon. It's been looped endlessly on every sports highlight show, slowed down for dramatic effect, and dissected from every possible angle. What fans saw in real time is now being broken down frame by frame, as if the Zapruder film just got a football remix. And let's be honest, it looks bad. It doesn't matter if you're a DK stan, or just someone flipping channels. Watching a pro athlete launch a punch toward a fan in the middle of a packed stadium is jarring. No helmet, no pads, just raw emotion unleashed in front of tens of thousands in person, and millions more watching later. But even amid the uproar, there's still one massive unknown. What was said? The video shows the swing, the anger, the chaos, but the audio's muddy at best. Those close to the situation say it wasn't just typical trash talk. According to sideline sources, the fan crossed every line. Racial slurs, personal digs, maybe even doxing-style attacks using Metcalf's full legal name. That's not just heckling. That's targeted harassment. And while it doesn't excuse violence, it complicates the story. It's the reason some fans are defending DK with more passion than usual. Because there's a difference between boo, you suck, and weaponizing someone's identity to get under their skin. So far, Metcalf hasn't made a full public statement, but the expectation is that he'll be forced to speak soon, either at a press conference or through a statement crafted with legal guidance. And when he does, every word will be scrutinized. Is he contrite? Does he explain what set him off? Does he place blame squarely on the fan, or share responsibility? This isn't just about optics. The tone of his statement could directly affect the league's decision. A heartfelt apology? That could soften the blow. A defensive, combative tone? That could make a suspension more likely. It's a high-wire act, and every PR rep in the building knows it. Meanwhile, the NFL is combing through everything. Multiple camera angles, stadium audio, fan reports, even pre-game interactions. They're not just looking at the punch. They're tracing the lead-up. Did the fans say anything earlier? Did stadium security already know he was a problem? Were there warning signs? That kind of context matters. If the fan had a history of abusive behavior, or if he had already been warned that day. It could shift how the NFL handles this. Because the question isn't just, did DK punch someone? It's, was this something that could have and should have been prevented by the stadium or team? DK Metcalf sidelined. For now, Metcalf is still active, but sources inside the team say he's already being managed like he's one step away from being sidelined. Coaching staff are prepping backup wideouts. They're tweaking game plans. It's like a fire drill, just in case the league drops a suspension 48 hours before game time. And you can feel the stress. The Steelers are in survival mode. They need every offensive weapon they've got, and Metcalf is at the top of that list. If he's pulled, it's not just about missing a star. It's about completely shifting the offensive balance right before the postseason. Some fans argue that he should be suspended no matter what, that rules are rules, and if the NFL lets this slide, it sets a dangerous precedent. But others are pushing back hard, saying the league needs to finally address the fan problem head-on. Because let's be real, Metcalf wasn't the first player to be verbally assaulted from the stands. This has been simmering for years. Athletes across sports, from LeBron James to Russell Westbrook, have complained about abusive fans crossing the line. They've asked for more accountability. And now, after Metcalf's punch, the NFL can't pretend it's just part of the game. Back at practice, DK is trying to act like nothing's changed. But everyone knows it has. He's surrounded by media every step of the way. Teammates are giving sidelong glances. Coaches are micromanaging his reps. There's an unspoken tension in the air, like everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop. And honestly, that pressure cooker might be what caused this in the first place. Weeks of buildup, relentless criticism, playoff pressure, and then one fan crosses a line, and boom, a boiling point. League insiders are now split on how this ends. Some believe he'll be fine but allowed to keep playing. Others say he's looking at a multi-game suspension, especially if the NFL wants to make an example. It's a no-win situation. If they let him off easy, critics will say they're soft on violence. If they suspend him hard, others will say they're ignoring the fans' abuse. This is what happens when there are no clear rules for moments like this. Everything becomes reactive, case by case, fueled by media narratives instead of structured policy. And for Pittsburgh, the timing could not be worse. They're hanging by a thread in the playoff race, trying to claw their way into a wild card slot. Every game counts. Every snap matters. Taking Metcalf out of the equation throws their whole rhythm into chaos. He's their deep threat, their big body target, the guy who can flip a drive with one play. Losing him shifts the load onto younger receivers who aren't ready for that pressure. And opposing defenses? They're already licking their chops. Meanwhile, the Lions are just trying to stay out of the drama. They were the opposing team that night, but no one's talking about their performance. It's like they played an entire game and still got reduced to background noise in DK's meltdown saga. That's the collateral damage of moments like this. It hijacks narratives, reshapes headlines, and turns competitive game into a morality play. No one remembers the box score. They remember the punch. As the days passed, the silence around DK Metcalf became just as loud as the punch itself. No immediate apology. No detailed explanation. Just short, controlled interactions with teammates and staff as the league continued its review behind closed doors. Every hour without a ruling added more tension. Fans weren't just waiting for news. They were picking sides. Some said this was a breaking point moment. A player pushed past his limits by behavior the league refuses to seriously address. Others saw it as a clear violation of professional conduct, no matter the provocation. And in the middle of all of it was Metcalf, trying to prepare for football while the entire league debated his character. When Metcalf finally did face the media, the tone was careful. He didn't deny what happened. He didn't try to reframe the punch as something else. He acknowledged the situation and emphasized that emotions ran high. What he didn't do was go into graphic detail about what was said to him, and that omission felt intentional. Because once specific language enters the public record, everything changes. The league has to respond differently. The conversation shifts from player lost control to system failed to protect. And that's a door the NFL rarely likes to open unless it has no choice. Inside the Steelers organization, the mood was defensive but pragmatic. Coaches avoided public commentary beyond standard statements. Privately, the concern was simple: availability. Playoff football doesn't wait for investigations. If the league ruled quickly, they needed to be ready. Game plans were adjusted. Extra reps were given to secondary receivers. The coaching staff prepared for the possibility that Metcalf wouldn't be on the field, even if they believed the punishment might ultimately be reduced. That kind of uncertainty messes with timing, chemistry, and confidence. And at this stage of the season, those things matter more than ever. For Detroit, the incident became an uncomfortable footnote to a game they wanted to move past. They weren't responsible for the fan. They weren't involved in the altercation. But their stadium, their crowd, and their security protocols were now part of the discussion. Questions were quietly raised about whether ushers or security were close enough to intervene before things escalated, whether complaints had been logged earlier, whether this was a one-off or a symptom of something larger. None of it was officially pinned on the Lions, but the scrutiny was. As public opinion hardened, Metcalf supporters kept circling back to the same point. Accountability can't be one-sided. Fans aren't untouchable just because they bought a ticket. The league markets intensity, rivalries, and emotion, but rarely addresses what happens when that spills into outright abuse. This wasn't a demand to excuse the punch. It was a demand to contextualize it, to acknowledge that players aren't operating in a vacuum. They hear the insults. They feel the hostility. And sometimes the line between professional restraint and human reaction gets tested in the worst possible way. By the end of the week, the possibility of Metcalf being sidelined felt real, not hypothetical. Real. The league's review was nearing completion, and insiders hinted that discipline was coming. The only unknown was the severity. A fine would sting, but be manageable. A suspension would be devastating. Not just financially, but competitively. One game missed in December can erase months of work. And that reality hung over every practice, every meeting, every conversation in the locker room. What made the situation so explosive wasn't just the act. It was the timing. Late season, playoff implications, national spotlight. If this had happened in week 3, the fallout would have been different. But December football magnifies everything. Stakes are higher. Consequences hit harder. That's why this incident didn't fade after a day or two. It stayed in the news cycle because it touched too many pressure points at once: race, fan behavior, violence, discipline, and competitive integrity. The NFL doesn't get to separate those issues when they collide this publicly. As game day approached, Pittsburgh fans were split between frustration and anxiety. Some were angry at Metcalf for putting the team in this position. Others were angry at the league for allowing fan behavior to escalate unchecked. Most just wanted clarity, because uncertainty is brutal in sports. You can't adjust emotionally until you know what you're adjusting to. And the longer the league waited to announce its decision, the more the situation felt like it was spiraling beyond control. No matter how the league ultimately rules, this moment is already etched into the season story. DK Metcalf punching a fan during a live NFL game will be referenced in future debates about conduct, safety, and accountability. It's not going away. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth the league has to face. This wasn't just a bad moment. It was a mirror, one that reflected the cracks in how fan behavior is handled, how players are protected, and how quickly things can unravel when those systems fail. When the NFL's ruling finally dropped, it landed with the weight of inevitability. DK Metcalf was officially suspended 1 game. No appeal, no drawn-out drama. Just a crisp press release citing violation of league conduct standards and a line about preserving the integrity of the game. Metcalf followed with his own brief statement. He didn't contest the punishment. He took responsibility for his reaction, thanked his teammates, and made a point to say he hoped the league would continue to take fan behavior seriously. Short, measured, but for those reading between the lines, the message was clear. I took my hit. Now it's your move. The game he missed was brutal. The Steelers looked flat. The offense stalled out in the red zone, and the absence of Metcalf's physicality was impossible to ignore. They lost. And it wasn't just a loss, it was a playoff setback. The kind of result that shifts seeding, changes wild card tiebreakers, and sends an entire city into sports radio meltdown mode. Critics pointed to that as proof. One bad decision, one moment of losing control, and the team paid the price. But others argued that the real loss wasn't just Metcalf's absence. It was a lack of a system that prevents things like this from reaching a boiling point. Inside the locker room, teammates kept things diplomatic. No one threw Metcalf under the bus. But you could hear it in their tone, frustration, disappointment, and exhaustion from being dragged into something that had nothing to do with football preparation. Coaches were more direct and private. They knew they couldn't afford another distraction. This wasn't just about Metcalf anymore. It was about setting the tone for the rest of the season. Every player was reminded of what's at stake. One more misstep, and the postseason could vanish. In the days after suspension, a deeper conversation began brewing. Less about what DK did, and more about what this league tolerates. Analysts started calling out the culture of fan entitlement. Reporters dug up other incidents, other athletes who'd been baited and berated. Suddenly, the punch wasn't an isolated act. It was a symptom of something systemic. There were calls for stricter fan conduct codes, real-time stadium bans, and better training for security. And for once, it wasn't just lip service. Multiple teams reportedly began reviewing their in-stadium protocols in response to the backlash. It shouldn't take a viral punch to make change happen, but here we are. As DK returned to the field the following week, the energy was different. The cameras followed his every move. The broadcasters didn't just talk about his routes. They talked about his redemption arc. Everything he did was now viewed through the lens of what had just happened. And Metcalf? He didn't flinch. No extra drama. No fiery outbursts. Just clean routes, crisp catches, and a clear message. I'm here to play. Whether he earned back every fan's trust didn't matter. What mattered was showing the league and his team that one mistake didn't define him. But let's be honest. This isn't over. Not really. The punch might be in the past. But the issues it raised are still staring the NFL in the face. Player safety. Fan behavior, league accountability. And somewhere in the middle of all of that is a very clear warning shot. If the systems don't evolve, someone else is going to snap next. If you've been following this story, tell us, where do you stand? Was the punishment fair? Should the league have done more? Should fans face real consequences for crossing the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown worth your time, share it with someone still arguing about it in the group chat. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. We got more breakdowns coming in. Trust us, the drama never sleeps.